Hi, everyone. Is AI going to make us like those fat corpuscles driving around in Gravo chairs in the movie Wall-E? You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Techstrong, gang. It's great to have you on. Hope you've been enjoying the commentary lately. There's certainly enough to comment about in this crazy world that we live in and crazy times we're living through. We have a lot to go over today, including is AI making us fat, lazy, and dumb? It's a terrible way to go through life. Let me introduce you first, though, to our to our gang that's going to discuss it today. Joining us, I think she's back home in Colorado after her California ventures. She is a Futurum analyst, infrastructure, storage, just a lot of general all-around smart. Exactly opposite of the AI making us stupid people. Our friend Camberly Bates. Hey, Camberly, it's great to have you.
Good to be on with Techstrong. It's always a lot of fun. I learned something from you guys.
Thank you. Well, we always learn from you, so thank you. Speaking of smart, how's that? From Hudson, Ohio. He's the CEO of Tech Field Day. It's my friend Stephen Foskett. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Honestly, I thought you were talking about Mike, but
I might have been, but I figured it's Tuesday. I'll cut you a break. But Stephen popped out of there. I think he was blushing.
Yeah.
I think he was blushing. We'll come back to Stephen in a minute, but let's run over to Harrison, New York, though, and introduce our Chief Content Officer, Mike Bizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. I'm waiting on the remake of Dumb and Dumber.
I think it's going to go Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest. They got a third. But certainly not dumb in anyone's book is our Echo Insights analyst and author of her new report, as well as editor, Bonnie Schneider. Hey, Bonnie, how are you?
I'm great, Alan. Great to be here. Thanks.
Good. We're going to talk more about your report.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about it last week, but we'll pick up on it today. All right, we're hoping Stephen will get back on here. But Mike, I opened up with us. I've had this sneaking suspicion for some time that first it was the internet and not going to the library and learning the Dewey Decimal System. But social media, now AI, video screens and phones, is it dumbing down the human race? And are we all destined to live in those Gravo chairs like the fat people in Wall-E?
It all started with the calculator, man. Nobody knows how to do math, and it's just getting worse. Yeah. But the issue is, as noted in a report put out by Carnegie Mellon University and Microsoft, that we're just maybe relying too much on AI. There's a general assumption that people kind of trust whatever gets presented with them on a computer screen, and that they're not going to reason enough about what is actually being presented to them by the AI model. And once that happens, we just all kind of sort of compound mistakes upon mistakes. And I don't know if this is something we need to just teach people. Is this something we got to get at the school level? But Alan, I'll start with you. Our cognitive reasoning capabilities may be declining even further than they are. And I know you don't think they're pretty high to start with.
No, I mean, yeah, I agree with the kind of the findings from this report is when people start using crutches, right, their muscles atrophy. And I think to a certain level, yes, our brain muscles have atrophied, right? When it comes to certain things. I mean, you laughingly talking about math, but how many people today actually, other than if you work in something in AI, for instance, where you have to know, some higher math skills, but even basic math skills, division, right? Algebra, basic algebra and geometry. How many of us know how to do that anymore? Or without a calculator, can we do it? It's the same thing for writing, right, Mike? We see this in trying to get people, everybody wants to write a story for DevOps.com or Security Boulevard. Their writing is atrocious, atrocious. So written skills, kids don't know how to read cursive script. The list goes on. And I could see this happening with AI. Just tell AI what you want it to write and it writes it for you. And I'll go one step further. Tell AI to write the code and it writes the code for you. Is it going to dumb down coding? You know, it's a fine mess we've got ourselves into here. I don't know if this is something you learn in school, or can we teach critical thinking in school? If so, how? Do we enforce the no calculators in the test rule? I don't know what the answer is.
I think checking, that's what I was doing. You can check, if something's AI written and teach a student that, if you're a teacher, that we can tell if it's AI. So don't bother just cutting and pasting it, teaching them reasoning. And then, of course, before all that, teaching them how to explain an idea, which I think is something we all grew up with, learning how to write a paragraph, to support it. But kids today, that's more of a struggle because they haven't had to do that. So I think that those basic skills of coming up with an idea and then finding ways to support your idea just on the basic level will help. But obviously, it's a long way to go.
So let me see. Good, Cam.
So I would even go beyond the kids.
That's what
so
I was
this-
going to point out.
This is one piece of it. And I was looking for the study on this, and I couldn't find it quickly this morning when we had this key topic coming over, which was one of the big consulting firms. It was McKinsey, BCG, one of those guys, had done some analysis on this kind of work. And they had one group that was doing a marketing plan that was using AI, and another group that did not use AI. And what they found is the one that was not using AI had more creative, out-of-bound thinking, et cetera. And that, because, to me, the reasoning behind that is because you're socializing between different thinking operations. And, that's why we like the concept of having a lot of different thinking and skills bases in terms of a group that works through some issues. So when you think about how we have to go through and problem solve, those are the things that we're looking for potentially an AI system to be used. And then the other piece I'll go to that is that I was looking at, as I was trying to search on this, I found a really great graphic that was done by BCG about what predictive AI does versus what Gen AI does. And if we think about what Gen AI is doing, it's content. It's really a lot of content, and versus predictive AI is giving me an analysis of where something is going. And that technology of how we code or how we direct the computer systems to operate is very different. And then what they're also saying is, how do you join those two pieces together to create even more analysis is going. But I absolutely agree. I mean, and I'll stop with this one, is like, I backpack, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the mountain and 20-year-old has got their GPS with them, and they're expecting that to get them through the mountains. And we're going, you get lost because the GPS doesn't work up there. You can have satellite, maybe that's going to help you out. But GPS, it's going to go, and you're screwed, with that. So there we go.
In theory, we should be using AI models to check the output of other AI models, and maybe that will help us determine what's reasoning. But then I worry that the AI models will just argue with each other forever, and to the point where
Well, so Camberly, I agree with you. This is not just a kid's problem. As we get older, they tell us if you don't work out, right, you lose muscle mass. If you don't use it, you lose it. It's the same thing for critical thinking skills and reasoning and stuff like this. And so, young people are very resilient. They'll figure out how to leverage this and be clever and what have you. And what they lose in dexterity, for lack of a better word, they may make up for in leveraging AI in ways we haven't thought of before. But I think it's the adults in the room. It's the, people my age, your age, 30 somethings, 40 somethings who, becoming overly reliant on these things may in fact kind of lose that muscle of creativity, of thinking out of the box, of doing things without it, right? Like all of a sudden, it's bad enough that most people refuse to read very much anymore, right? They just don't read. People don't read. We see it here at Techstrong. They like to watch videos rather than read.
And they're like bullet points.
And they like, yeah, and if they do read, they want it in 3 or 4 bullet points. But when you start getting to the point where people will say, well, AI can make that for me. If they don't make it for me, I don't want to, I'm not quite sure. It'll take me a very long time to make it. We all lose.
But we are also seeing long form come out. So whereas, one of the things that we've been seeing and why podcasts are on the swing up is because we are seeing the younger generation want the longer form. And they will hang on into that and listen to those longer, it doesn't have to be 3 minutes anymore. It can be like this is almost an hour session, right? We do it in 20-minute cycles or 15-minute cycles, but that gives us an opportunity to go into the topic much more deeply than it does on, cable news where they're only giving it 2 minutes, if that much time. So there's an potential analysis that's going on that we haven't seen before, even if it's done by video.
Right. So, Stephen, are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So the discussion was that the younger folks aren't doing enough reasoning because they're relying too much on AI. And since you're closer to this particular topic, I was just wondering, do senior citizens have an advantage now?
I thought you were going to call me a younger folk, and then I feel like you're calling me a senior citizen. But, speaking as one of the younger folks, no, I was reading these articles and I place the blame somewhat on AI itself. AI is the smart aleck know-it-all. It has no sense of humility. It has no sense of what it doesn't know. AI confidently answers everything, and in many cases confidently answers it wrongly, but so impressively that I feel like, I don't want to take the blame off of people entirely, but I do want to put the blame into the way that these AI applications are made. It's no surprise that Silicon Valley made a bunch of smart aleck robots that tell you how it is without giving any opportunity to have any other thing. But, think about it. You ask ChatGPT for a thing, or you're using Apple Intelligence to summarize an article or whatever. Are you really going to think critically about that when it comes across so confidently? It doesn't say, I think these are the main points of the article, or perhaps, in my opinion, this is where we should go. It says, no, here's a summary. Here's the important points. Here's the bullet points. And so it's no surprise that people look at that and say, okay, that must be right.
Yeah, but Stephen, you're kicking the dog, blaming the dog for being a dog. Whether AI is right or wrong, people shouldn't blindly just accept it and use it and move on. I don't care if it was right 100% of the time. So, okay, AI's right all the time. Let's all get into our Gravo chairs and get fat, right? I think the answer is no, you can't. Just like you don't bring calculators into the test, maybe there are some things that you don't use the AI for to exercise your brain. I think we're humans, we're problem solvers by genetics. And we need to continue being problem solvers. Now, we use tools, that's what separates, if so they say, that's what separates us from other animals and so forth, though we found animals do use tools too. But we need to be solving problems. That's how we continue our evolution, I think.
To be fair to the machines, though, we all have that friend who has an answer for everything and confidently tells you that this is something and by God, this is the actual facts. And upon further review, you always discover that that friend is dead wrong. So
Not always.
is not
I make a career out of this, but go ahead.
so is AI not that new friend who's kind of sometimes right, but always has to be checked?
I would say so. Exactly. I'm not blaming the dog for kicking it for getting kicked. What I'm saying is we humans built a tool that confidently answers everything. Is it any wonder that we're not questioning it?
So it also gets back to, okay, there's another scenario here, is that open book tests. You know, they started doing open book tests, you know, when I was doing this. And you could bring your books in. If you had to go through your book to find the answer, you're going to flunk that test. You did not have time to go and do that. And this gets back to your argument or your friend or your whatever giving you the statement of blah, 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 and you not having the data to come back to it because it's not in your brain. If you have to every time go through this to find out the answer, or to have a argument on any kind of like a negotiation. I mean, if I have to go to that for negotiation, I'm doomed. If I have to go to that for a lawyer sitting in front of questioning somebody, I'm doomed. So if I have to go to that as a doctor on everything, I'm doomed. So there's a lot of things that we are doing that we have that is just skills and jobs that if that's what we're doing as a consultant, if I'm sitting there pulling out my phone when my client is asking me a question about something, you know, I'm doomed.
No, but
You know,
so,
that's
but here's you're right, Camberly, but here's the reality. There is no more consultant, there is no more doctor, there is no more lawyer, it's the AI. You know, like right now, about half of my health appointments are telehealth, right? I get on Zoom with my doctor, we go over my blood work results, and, you know, we actually wind up shooting the crap about technology to tell you the truth. But whether that was really my doctor or some Max Headroom impersonation of my doctor is kind of, you know, to me, he's going through my blood results. It's going through my blood results and telling me what I should or shouldn't do based upon best practices. Same thing when I consult a lawyer. Same thing, frankly, when I consult a consultant, let's say in infrastructure or storage. And I think that's the scary thing, right? Are we going to replace, not just augment people, but replace them with these AIs?
Well, I think when you look at, okay, let's take best practices for infrastructure. And, you know, I just finished reading a book on cybersecurity, et cetera, and it's talking about it. You know, you have to understand that 20% of your technology within any kind of data center is changing at any point in time. So what are your best practices in addressing that? Yes, I'm going to use tools to bring that information to me about what's changed, what's going on, but I can't just peanut butter over with an AI. It can have it bringing, you know, forward the information that I probably need and probably need to make some decisions on. Maybe taking some of these decisions that I don't need to have to make every day, and applying that. But hopefully what happens is, and this is what we've talked about before on here, is what we've done is we've raised the decision-making to a higher level. We're having to make decisions on certain issues here and not the lower level decisions. The problem that brings is that the systems architect, the senior systems architect can make those decisions. He can use that, but we're not bringing the junior people up because they're not getting the chance to make the mistakes, make the analysis, and do the process. So that, to me, is the bigger threat about what AI is bringing to us, as opposed to having, you know, giving us some of the information to be able to make those decisions.
So how is this any better or worse than the number of queries that I've put into Google over the years? And every time I have a cold or a symptom and it comes back and tells me I have bubonic plague, it's like,
It does do that.
No. It's lupus. It's always lupus.
Well, but seriously though, right? You talked. I have friends who are doctors, and they call people like that, you know, people who have an MD from Google, right? and they're the scourge of the doctor's office because everyone calls up. I think I have lupus. I think I have plague. I think, well, because WebMD said that, and I did a Google search, and I probably have tumors on my brain, and you know, and they're like, calm down, and that's the difference. And Kimberly, I hope that that's the way it stays, right? That the doctor, the real human doctor, is who we go to, and we stop relying on Google Doc. But it's hard. I mean, I could see the reasoning behind this. Anyway, hey, we're over 20 minutes on this one. We've got to jump. We've got a lot more to talk about. You're watching Techstrong Gang. We'll be right back with our heads in the clouds, a report from Tech Field Day.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to Techstrong Gang. So I'm Stephen Foskett, and I was out at Cloud Field Day last week, and I thought I would share some of the insights that we learned on site during that event. Now, this was a special one for me because I attended Cloud Field Day as a delegate, not as the organizer, not as the founder, not as I sat in the chair, I listened to the presentations, I asked some good and some joking questions, and I started writing about some of these presentations. So it was a really interesting event. We like to say at Tech Field Day that there's never a theme of a Tech Field Day intentionally, but there's always a theme just after the fact, because that's just sort of, it reflects the state of the industry. And this event was no different. Almost every presentation focused on the challenges of cloud networking and security. And most of the presentations also discussed the challenges of this hybrid infrastructure where you have some things running in the cloud, some things on-prem, some things running in a different cloud, and you're trying to make sense of all that. That was a really interesting observation for me because you see some companies here that were presenting, for example, Selector, Catchpoint, Infoblox. You look at these companies and you're saying those are networking companies. What are they doing at Cloud Field Day? We've got Fortinet, Haiku, who have traditionally played in the cyber readiness, data protection, security spaces, and you look at them and you're saying, so the cloud, huh? But it's so true. Everything they said came back to the cloud and cloud infrastructure. And specifically, in most cases, it came back to the challenges of dealing with this sort of proliferation of everything in the cloud. Essentially, it's become incredibly easy to spin up applications, to spin up complicated web scale applications in the cloud. And now people are starting to realize, wait a second, we need this data protected. We need to watch for bad actors who are trying to attack it. We need to figure out ways of integrating that with other aspects of IT. We need to get some control over this thing because it's just sprawling completely out of control. And there are incredible risks to that. This sounds like the kind of thing we've been talking about here on Techstrong Gang for a long time. I know, Camberly, you and I have talked about this. Mike, I know you've written about this. This whole challenge of things just getting out of hand in the cloud, I think that resonates with y'all, right?
And I bet to Haiku. I didn't listen to the session with Haiku, but Haiku 2 years ago launched a big initiative to enable protection of SaaS applications. At that time, we were still seeing a slow buildup of protection. Maybe it was even 3 years ago. Slow buildup of protection of Microsoft 365. A little bit of buildup of Salesforce.com. But the rest of SaaS, those applications that you had running, and so many of the companies now, their core applications and their data is sitting in these SaaS environments. And, let's say your HR information is up there, or your ERP system is up there, and you're thinking that that company is responsible for protecting your data. Well, Microsoft came out and said, no, we're not protecting 365. You want your data protected? You need to go do it. And so all of a sudden there's this rash of stuff that was going on with there. And so yes, I would understand that it's, it's about backing it up, it's about protecting it, it's making sure that nobody can attack it. So it does not, and I think that had a ripple effect with some of the other SaaS firms just saying, no, I'm not going to take that liability. That's too big of a liability for me to, be responsible for my company. What I am doing is delivering an application. I am not doing data protection on all the systems and security.
I think that there were there were some outages about a year or so ago, a spate of them in the cloud, maybe two. And I think that made multi-cloud a more real concept in people's minds, but they realized they were overly dependent upon one service and they had a single point of failure. I feel like we've been talking about this subject for years, but I don't think many people were actually doing it until recent times, but that's just my sense of it.
So I think they have been. I think, frankly, for the most part, the analyst community and the press missed the boat on multi-cloud. I think we were all very focused on hybrid cloud, private and public, but everyone thought you'd put all your eggs in one public hyperscaler, whether it's AWS or Microsoft or whoever, or Google or Oracle, whatever. But the reality is people pick the best tool for the job. And so they put this over there, this there, that there, and there's more. But wait, there's more. Now we also have the edge, right? And people are putting stuff on the edge, and they're putting some stuff that's going to run on the endpoint, and then it still runs on the data center and private cloud and VMware versus not VMware, right? We truly do live in a multi-cloud, multi-homed environment. Back in 1999, 2000, actually it was 2000, I helped write a business plan for a company called Lattice Networks, Latis. And we envisioned, based in Boulder, Cam, and we envisioned a world where this happened. It was before modern containers and all of that. But we thought that applications and data would be distributed. And we raised some money for it, and it was a miserable failure. We pivoted, and that Lattice Networks became Still Secure. Mitchell Ashley and I were two of the three co-founders, and that became Still Secure because we were way before its time. But that's exactly the world we live in today, in a truly, truly distributed architecture. However, when it comes to the security of SaaS data, I have a bone to pick. Right? One of the premises, no pun intended, premises of security on the cloud is a partnership between the cloud provider and the user, because I don't have access to all of that infrastructure. I cannot protect the infrastructure. I probably can't protect anything below the OS in your average infrastructure as a service, right? I'm responsible for security above that. Amazon, AWS for one, has done a lot to give me visibility into that infrastructure security, but very little capability into that infrastructure. And it's still my responsibility, right? Because ultimately it's still my data. And so I'm ultimately responsible. It's a terrible thing to be responsible without capability. It's like taxation without representation, right? Same thing here goes for SaaS. Now you look at Techstrong. We don't really have any infrastructure. We're basically a SaaS company. Everything we use are SaaS. I don't have a server closet. I don't have storage on S3 or something like that I know of. But we use a lot of SaaS. It's incumbent on those providers to make sure my data, right? Because when we get third-party requests, I go back to my SaaS providers. I say, are you SOC 2 compliant? Give me your proof, because your proof is my proof. So And I'll go so far as Microsoft too, right? That data for most of us is stored in OneDrive. When OneDrive has an issue, they could say they're not responsible until their president gets his ass hauled in before Congress and says, mea culpa, right?
Yeah, but the CSPs have never been responsible for your data protection. And I think Stephen has got some commentary on that, some new products that are coming out. But I mean, I dealt with 10 years ago, I dealt with the firm that had their data wiped out by the CSP. And the CSP, because of bad practices on the data protection. But if you read the fine print, they are not responsible unless there is malfeasance.
And
That's
it's not
the
even
only
fine
place
print.
they
I mean,
have
that's just, yeah, it's explicit. I mean, they're available
Mhm.
for they're responsible for availability, not even high availability. And immutability in some respects, but again, not even immutability, just sort of like, yes, it's probably going to be the right data. They're not responsible for data protection. That's why companies like Haiku, like you said, are impressive because they can hit that. But to Alan's point as well, I mean, it really is, companies are going to be using more than one cloud. They're going to be using more than one environment. And that's where some of these other companies come in. So, Infoblox really impressed everybody because, I mean, DNS, DHCP, and IP address management is super boring. It is the most boring subject in the world, but it's also the most important subject in the world when you have this proliferation of automatically spun up machines that are just populating the world out there. And Infoblox showed that they can really do a great job of that in modern cloud environments. The same is true with, for example, Catchpoint. They came in and they were talking about basically, you can't control if AWS goes down or if, some infrastructure element in the internet goes down, but it's a really good idea to monitor and manage that. Because again, you can throw up your hands and say, oh, these SaaS providers should be responsible for their own stuff. They should be responsible for high availability, for data protection, but they're ultimately not. And ultimately, if it fails, it's your problem, not their problem, because you're the one that was running your application there. And so you need to know if the infrastructure is running. You need to know if it's protected. Fortinet was talking about doing data protection of SaaS applications, buckets and AWS accounts with the wrong permissions and that sort of thing. Again, it's real easy to set this stuff up wrong and end up exposing your information or having people take your stuff over. You need to be able to jump in there and make sure that this stuff is configured correctly, because your cloud service provider isn't. Just like they're not responsible for data protection, they're also not responsible for misconfiguration. And again, for real continuous availability and that sort of thing. They're just not going to do it. And so you need these things. You need something that's going to make sure that your network is configured properly, like Selector was talking about. You need something that is going to make sure that everything is going to continue to run, because this is your infrastructure. To Alan's point, this is my infrastructure and Techstrong's and Futurum. We don't have a data center. We have the cloud. And so we have to apply the same concepts we would in the data center to the cloud.
And I think there's two different areas that you need to be looking at. One is your infrastructure, if you're using the cloud as your infrastructure. And the other one is if you're using a SaaS. Both of those, read the fine print, because it will say that they're not responsible except for malfeasance in essence. You read the fine print and then understand what you need to make sure that you protect it, whether or not, if you lose that data, what happens on a SaaS situation. If you lose your network, what happens? And so those are two different discussions, if you will, but related.
Can I just clarify here? So are we actually saying that the phrase shared responsibility is not worth the contract it's written on? Is that what we're basically saying?
No, I don't think so. I
Well,
think there is a
it's
shared responsibility, but there's a limit to how much they're sharing. So
So-
understand what they are going to do. And if you want to have any more than that, then you need to have something there. I mean, understand it's, trust but verify.
So that it's always been a shared responsibility, but the liability, the responsibility has always been on the end user. That's been true in the cloud since day one. And really, back in those days, what's the biggest inhibitor to more cloud adoption? Cloud security. that was the standard response we did here in the security world. Because the idea was I can't be responsible for what I can't control, right? I can't do that. Now, I will tell you, companies like Akamai, Cloudflare, both companies we've featured on Techstrong, Cloudflare, we do our last great cloud transformation with. We're a customer as well. They try to offload some of that responsibility, if you will, right? But ultimately, when the stuff hits the fan, you get left holding the bag. That is absolutely true. And then it becomes a question of trust. Do you trust? Because these are your partners. That SaaS provider is your partner. That cloud provider is your partner. Do you trust them doing their job? And then what do you do about that?
Yeah, and there's this ugly word that I've always felt like is an ugly word called audits. And I know, exactly, I cringe at
I
that.
thought they fired all those guys.
Well, as I said, I was reading this book this weekend on cybersecurity. It's called Cyber Warfare and Peace. And when he talked about the audits, thinking about audits is what you're going to use to expose where you have gaps. And that the goodness about audits is it's showing you where you may be, if you're talking, as I said, infrastructure, 20% of it's changing. Where are my gaps? What am I missing? So I want to have an audit basically to say, okay, here is my gap. I need to block it. I need to take care of this. So it's for the first time, I'm thinking in a positive fashion about what an audit can do for me.
I think that's, most people would rather 22 to the back of the head. But anyway, hey, we're over 15 minutes. We need to take a break on this one. We're going to come back and revisit part 2 of Bonnie's newest report. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Well, my report I've been talking about is finally published. It was published just last Wednesday, and we're getting some great feedback on it. It's called Decisions That Define Executive Strategies and Innovations Driving Corporate Sustainability, available on ecotechreport.com. And I wanted to focus, now that the report is available to everyone, the impact and takeaways specifically for IT practitioners, since that is a big portion of our audience here on Techstrong TV. So here's a little short video to show you some of the findings and where the impacts might be felt by those practitioners.
Decisions that define executive strategies and innovations driving corporate sustainability highlights 5 major shifts transforming IT infrastructure and reshaping operations. Power demands are rising. Greater computing power requires more electricity, pushing companies to adopt AI-driven power management, liquid cooling, and greener cloud regions to improve efficiency while easing pressure on resources. Optimizing energy cuts costs. Moving from CPUs to GPUs can significantly lower consumption, with some businesses reducing usage by up to 50%, turning efficiency into a financial advantage. Hardware is lasting longer. The standard 4-year replacement cycle is fading. More companies are refurbishing, repurposing, and designing infrastructure for longevity, with some targeting 75% circularity by 2030, reducing e-waste along the way. Regulations are tightening. The EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is now in effect, requiring affected companies to implement systems that track, and disclose carbon emissions. IT roles are evolving. Climate-conscious technology is now a priority, yet the talent pool isn't keeping pace. Companies are working to close the gap through hiring and training initiatives. Read Decisions That Define Executive Strategies and Innovations Driving Corporate Sustainability. Go to ecotechreport.com.
It's been great getting feedback on this report to see what people are saying. I recently had the chance to be on the Schwab Network talking about it as well. And one of the innovations about it was talking about the AI, energy use, sustainable investing. I think there's a lot of crossover into these findings, and I look forward to everyone checking out the report. And IT practitioners that are watching us, please read it, and I'd love to hear your feedback as well.
Yeah, it's a great report. So what I find interesting is there are some people who hear sustainability and they immediately go political and all the stuff that's out there, but that's not what we want to talk about today. I wanted to really focus on there are truly economic reasons to do sustainability, right? To do these things. And give us, I mean, I believe, for instance, you had 5 sustainability shifts in IT odds, but talk about
Yeah,
the
and it's
economic
really
reasons
the
behind it.
economic reasons. Right, and that's something I talked about. It started off with, well, it'd be nice if we were more sustainable. Let's get our emissions down to net zero, and those goals remain. Of course, we hear about that all the time from big tech. But what we're finding is that vendors, and I actually looked at the startup dates for a lot of the companies that I talked to in the report, and many of them just were created within the past 3 to 5 years. So it's really kind of exciting to see the growth in this area. And the ones that are newer are ones that create SaaS tools for IT teams for different types of companies. It could be any industry to track and record their carbon data emissions and how to run their IT operations more efficiently. So that's when you start getting into cost savings. And many companies are reporting success with savings because they are running things more efficiently. They have software that can tell them when to tap into renewable energy as a resource. One of the ones I talked about for cloud regions, to pick a provider that's where it's located, in the case of Platform SH, located in Quebec because they're relying on hydropower. So there is an ROI factor that's now being able to be quantified that I really get into in the report. And I think it's important because we've talked about sustainability quite a bit on Techstrong Gang, and it's always the same. Well, if it's not going to cost more, no, but if it saves us money, okay, we're open. And I think we've crossed over to that point based on the data that we're seeing.
Fair enough.
Camberly, can I draw a line between the amount of energy being generated or consumed and the actual cost? I mean, is it that linear, or is it more like a barometer that tells me that my costs are going up, but I can't really track it that granularly?
It's definitely something that's not linear. And I think Microsoft is finding that as well, because their chief sustainability officer recently put out a statement about it, that, when it comes to what the goals are, and then all of a sudden the use of AI, things can shift. So many companies are doing offset credits for carbon to try to reach their goals. It's a little bit of calculating how much energy is going to be used, how much renewable energy can we use, and then is it available? And that's something that's being decided now. And then, of course, we talked also about on the show about nuclear energy as another option.
Now, I look at sustainability as way beyond the energy piece of it. Sustainability to me is what we're putting into, waste, and how do we recycle that? And recycling, is kind of like here at our lab here, we had a company come in and cart away probably close to 800 pounds of old gear that they were all going to take apart and recycle the metals, recycle whatever, and how it goes. So that does not go into, the trash bin. Company, I believe it's Marvell, that they're using their CXL technology and deploying it. So CXL, which enables you to pool memory. And they've designed it, and I think it's Amazon is picking it up in order to recycle their DDR. Their older DDR is going to go into this CXL technology. It's going to go into the slower processors that they have. But instead of jettisoning the DDR, going directly to DDR5, you can actually have this pool, and that's good enough for certain applications. So some unique areas of different kinds of sustainability that go into
Definitely.
what you're talking about.
But that is a huge thing, right? Bonnie and I are down here in Florida. Florida is a notoriously plastic civilization, especially South Florida where we live. Everything gets basically redone every 7 years or so. They just tear down stuff and build new. And it's so wasteful because especially in tech, especially, just because you don't have an iPhone 16 doesn't make your iPhone 14 or 13. There are people around the world that would give their right arm for an iPhone 13. But our society, I don't know if I want to do the Apple trade-in. I'll just leave it here in my drawer because they're only going to give me $99 or whatever it is. And so we're incredibly wasteful to that point. And then how much of it a year or two later goes from the drawer, Camberly, to your point, right into the garbage bin, which then winds up in some public landfill, right? Those are good parts that should be recycled, and they're toxic to boot to put them in the waste, in the landfill.
One of the companies, Human IT, that's featured in my report, is really incredible out of California. They take all of the companies' unused phones or work laptops that they're not using, and they find veterans and families in need who need them, refurbish them, and at a much lower price, provide them for schools. And the success has been phenomenal. And just the appreciation, as you were saying, those kids are thrilled to have any laptop. So
Sure.
it's really, it's really, I think it's one of the things that's happening, and HP also is doing that with Renew Solutions, very successful program where they military grade testing to make sure whatever they're reselling is, functioning perfectly. So I think that's going to move, and we're going to see continuing because it is profitable, and it's also helping people too.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Guys, if that's it, I'd like to call a wrap on this version of the Techstrong Gang. Couple of announcements. First of all, we made reference of the Tech Field Day report that happened, I guess, last week, Cloud Tech Field Day report. Of course, all of those videos are available. I believe they're on Techstrong TV, and they're also on the Tech Field Day YouTube channel. So for anything that we were talking about, if it piqued your interest, go check it out. Bonnie, your report is
ecotechreport.com.
ecotechreport.com. You could download that. That's pretty cool. Camberly, infrastructure matters. You mentioned, this is something we're going to start featuring more on Techstrong. Actually, I have this week I have my very first interview with Ryan Stroud from Signal 65 Lab. We're going to be featuring the lab a lot more on Techstrong and some of the great work they're doing and the reports that are available. You don't even have to register for them. They're free to just go download and have a look at, which is great.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool stuff. I'm on their channel, their back channel, and all the conversation that goes around the testing. So it's pretty cool things that they're learning, through the process of what all they're doing. And I believe there's a report coming out on Intel Granite, which will be fascinating to hear.
IBM Granite.
IBM Granite, and then Intel's, what other GPU is named?
A something. Yes, we're gonna. There's 3 reports that Ryan and I are going to hit over the next week or two. So that'll be great. And in the meantime, we'll just keep rocking and rolling. Everyone, thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for the rest of Techstrong TV. It's probably another 2-3 hours at least of content today. And of course, you could also just check stuff out on techstrong.tv, our Techstrong TV YouTube channel, or any of our 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever sites that we're running here at Techstrong. Until then, though, everyone, this is Alan Schimmel. We're out of here.